Gypsy Rose Blanchard served 8 years in prison for the second-degree murder of her mother and is now a social media star. But getting into the case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, we need to start at the beginning. Gypsy Rose Blanchard grew up with her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, making claims about her health in a series of dire diagnoses and medical interventions. However, Gypsy wasn't actually unwell. Her mother had actually been lying about her symptoms. Experts believe that Dee Dee's behaviour stemmed from the medical disorder Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Because Dee Dee wanted to be a caretaker, she feigned and induced illnesses in her daughter. The truth about Gypsy and her mother only came out after Gypsy arranged for her online boyfriend to murder Dee Dee back in 2015. So Gypsy Rose, who was born in 1991, was just a baby when Dee Dee claimed that her daughter had sleep apnea. And when Gypsy was 8 years old, Dee Dee described her as suffering from leukemia and muscular dystrophy and said that she required a feeding tube as well as a wheelchair. The list of medical problems that Dee Dee would relate about her daughter would go on to include seizures, asthma and hearing and visual impairments. Due to Dee Dee's actions, Gypsy was prescribed a litany of medications and had to sleep using a breathing machine. She also went through multiple surgeries, including procedures on her eyes and removal of her salivary glands. When Gypsy's teeth rotted, perhaps due to her medications, missing salivary glands, or neglect, they were then pulled out. Yet, the truth was that Gypsy could walk, didn't need a feeding tube, and didn't have cancer. Her head was bald only because her mother shaved off her hair. Now experts believe that Dee Dee had a mental illness known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy, also called fictitious disorder imposed on another, which made her fabricate her daughter's ill health in order to receive attention and sympathy for taking care of a sick child. Medical tests often showed inconclusive or contradictory results regarding Gypsy's diagnosis, but Dee Dee would just stop seeing any doctors who questioned her daughter's ailments, and many caregivers just simply went along with what Dee Dee wanted. Now, Dee Dee had some nurses training, so she could accurately describe certain symptoms, and she sometimes gave Gypsy certain medication to mimic certain conditions. When Gypsy was old enough to talk, Dee Dee instructed her not to volunteer any information during their appointments. She was always the one relating Gypsy's fake medical history. Dee Dee told Gypsy's father, Rod Blanchard, about their daughter's disorder that had led to many health issues. He complimented Dee Dee for her devoted care. And when some of Dee Dee's family noticed that Gypsy didn't really need a wheelchair and started asking questions, Dee Dee just simply moved away. Dee Dee claimed to be a victim of Hurricane Katrina. So Dee Dee and Gypsy received assistance to relocate from Louisiana to Missouri in 2005. And while there, Dee Dee continued to take Gypsy to doctor's appointments. And Hurricane Katrina would now provide Dee Dee with the excuse of a reasoning as to why she had missing medical files on her daughter, Gypsy Rose Blanchard. In 2008, Gypsy and Dee Dee moved into a new house in Springfield, Missouri. Built by Habitat for Humanity, the house was painted pink and came with a wheelchair ramp. Gypsy and Dee Dee also received benefits that included charity-sponsored visits to things like concerts and Disney World. And all along, Dee Dee continued to bask in the devoted role that she was taking as a caretaker. When Gypsy was 14, she saw a neurologist in Missouri who came to believe that she was the victim of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. However, the doctor never reported this case to authorities. But later on in interviews, he stated that he just didn't believe there was enough evidence to act upon this. In 2009, an anonymous report was made to authorities that Dee Dee's claims about her daughter's ailments had no medical basis. This resulted in 2 caregivers visiting the home, but Dee Dee again would manage to convince them that there was nothing wrong. As Gypsy grew older, Dee Dee began to lie about her age, going as far as to alter the dates on Gypsy's birth certificate just to make their daughter seem younger. But as Gypsy became older, she became harder for Dee Dee to control. In 2011, Gypsy tried to get away from her mother by running away with a man that she'd met online at a science fiction convention. But Dee Dee soon tracked them down via mutual friends and managed to convince the man that Gypsy was actually a minor, even though she was actually 19 at the time. According to Gypsy, when they returned home, Dee Dee then smashed up her computer and physically restrained her to her bed. Gypsy also stated that sometimes her mother may hit her as well as deny her food. Gypsy would eventually manage to get back online, and she joined a Christian dating site, and this is where she would meet Nicholas Garjon. Nicholas Garjon was born on May 20th, 1989. His parents separated when he was young, and when he was in grade school, he was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and his whole time in school was also spent in special education classes. Nicholas was described as isolated isolated and socially awkward. After he finished school, he wanted to become a computer technician, but he was unable to learn the material online and was also unemployed. In October of 2012 was when he would meet Gypsy on the Christian singles dating website. Now, Gypsy had already tried to escape once before, and because of this, Gypsy believed that she was trapped in a situation where there was no escape. So the only option seemed to be in Gypsy's mind that she would need to eliminate the problem, which was Dee Dee. And Gypsy, feeling increasingly desperate to escape the mistreatment received to her by her mother, that after making only online contact with Nicholas after 8 days, that the young couple were lovers. But their relationship would need to remain a secret because Dee Dee would not allow Gypsy to have any communication or contact with anyone else. So Gypsy and Nicholas would mainly communicate at night in order to avoid detection from her mother. Now, during these conversations, Nicholas had a strong interest in BDSM, which heavily influenced the nature of their discussions. He believed that he was deeply in love with Gypsy and thought of her as his soulmate. So the couple would then engage in an experiment to see if Dee Dee would accept Nicholas as Gypsy's lover. So on March 12, 2015, Gypsy and her mother went to watch Cinderella at a movie theatre in Springfield, Missouri. The plan would be that while Gypsy and Dee Dee were there, Nicholas would arrive. And Nicholas was able to arrive there because Gypsy had sent him the money for a bus fare to be able to get from Wisconsin over to Springfield.